Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? It is a Monday, August the 4th, the year of our Lord 2025, as we get set for another podcast pregame. The podcast, which will be recorded shortly. In fact, here's my setup if you're curious. There you go, ring light, camera, laptop, which is not on yet, but I am ready to go to unpack what has transpired in the sports world over the last 3 days, and quite a bit. Mostly baseball, as you know, some NFL stuff, NBA, a couple of signings, the Luka one being the bigger one, extensions that is, and then here in New York with Mikal Bridges, I have a thing or two to say about that. And then some WNBA stuff, which I want to chime in on, and that will pretty much be your podcast pregame, or as far as what's set for your podcast, the pregame itself. Obviously, I'll unpack a couple of things, notable things that I will discuss when it comes to what to expect here for today's pod. First and foremost, I mean, how could you not come out of this weekend, especially with baseball, and not talk about the Yankees? I mean, that was a series that, if George Steinbrenner was still around, and obviously he's been long out of our consciousness, 15 years plus, and for that performance over the weekend to where we all know they should have won on Friday night. Saturday, their bats didn't show up. They only had 2 hits, and you had one of the all-time base-running blunders. Although it's a regular season game, it gets kind of lost in the shuffle. But, man, Jazz Chisholm, I mean, he should have been benched for the rest of the weekend on what happened there Saturday night. And then yesterday, they get out of the gate with a leadoff home run by Trent Grisham, and they pretty much didn't muster anything else. Jazz Chisholm did hit a 2-run homer late, but it was 6-1 at the time. And I understand Luis Hill coming back from the IL, his first start since last year when he is the reigning AL Rookie of the Year, and did not fare well in his first start of the year. And it just so happened that the Marlins, and that's going to be the flip side of the podcast too, because those are going to be the 2 main themes to start. But first with the Yankees, as I'm connecting all my stuff here, my microphone, etc. Now let me turn my attention solely here. And I'm rocking the Jose Fernandez, which I did not do on Thursday's podcast, because Thursday, if you recall, was July 31st, and on that date, if he was still alive, may he rest in peace, he would have been 33 years of age. 33, because he died at 24. So I'm wearing it today, and I guess after a sweep of the Yankees, maybe this is apropos that I'm wearing this now, as opposed to on what would have been his 33rd birthday on Thursday. But yes, I'm going to unpack this Yankee disaster, and now that they're in Texas to play the Rangers over the next 3 days, and it's unfathomable to think that this team, despite that they don't have Aaron Judge, and I believe he'll be off the IL maybe as early as today, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, he's going to come back in a designated hitter's role. If they are so Jekyll and Hyde, and people will think that, oh, well, this is rock bottom, or, oh, this is the low point of the Yankee season. After Friday night, you could say that, but because there's still, 53 to 55 games left, the Yankees currently have the top spot in the wild card. As a matter of fact, they don't. The Red Sox do right now, come to think of it. So there is no way that the Yankees are just going to fall off of the face of the earth and not qualify for the postseason. Now, if that's the case, Aaron Boone should be gone, and you could even argue he should be gone now, but remember, he signed an extension. So to think that with everything that has transpired with this team, pretty much since the middle of June, because usually they go through those June swoons where they have those bad losing streaks, where they have that 6-game losing streak prior to getting that win against the Mets during the 4th of July weekend, and then they started off with a winning streak. When did they win? 5 in a row before losing to the Cubs, that back end of that series heading into the All-Star break. And then now, here they are mired. All right, 3-game losing streak, it's modest, but they come off of winning that Rays series where they had a big win, if you recall, in the middle of that series And now here it is as they limp out of Miami and into the Dallas-Fort Worth area to see whether or not that they could get back on the beam. And I think they're going to be fine overall, but there are problems, as we know. And who's to blame is the big question mark because, yeah, there is a lot to go around. Now, we know the one target, as I mentioned, the manager, but is he really to blame for some of what had transpired here over the weekend? And even before that, when they had some mental base running lapses in the Rays series? I'm going to get into all that. And then the flip side of that is the Marlins. I mean, under the radar, and I've been paying attention because if you've listened to the podcast, I've actually talked about them periodically over the last couple of weeks. But now here they are. They sweep the Yanks. They're at 500. And they are still a ways behind the Padres for the last playoff spot in the wild card. But now you're at 500, which means that, okay, I'd have to include you in this race. Now, mind you, 6.5 games is a lot to cover. And they have teams that they need to leapfrog. They got to go over the Reds, the Giants, the Cardinals. In fact, they may have leapfrogged the Cardinals now, come to think of it. But still, it's not as if they're 2 or 3 games back of the final spot in the National League. So, although I may have to include them here on the podcast because they had this unbelievable turnaround. I mean, think about this. Do you know what the Marlin record is since, I believe it was June 13th? And people are going to say, well, June 13th, it's some random date. You're just going to throw that at me, JAYREELZ? I don't know. What are they? Maybe 21 and, let's see. So that's what, if you do the math, 44 games. People are probably going to think it's like 5 games over 500. They're going to look at it and say, well, if they played 44 games, maybe they are, doing the math off the top of my head, 25 and 19. You're going to say, no. Their record is 30 and 14. Like, where does this come from? And give credit to Clayton McCullough, the manager of the team, and you couldn't even pick these guys out of a lineup. They really don't have one threat in their lineup that is going to make you say, oh, well, Kyle Stowers, I take that back. I got to give him his flowers because he's an all-star this year. What a trade. Remember, they traded the lefty Trevor Rogers, and they got him, Connor Norby, and I believe a couple other players in the process. But Stowers is becoming a star. He had a couple of home runs over the weekend, and including a grand slam there on Friday night. And he's been the key contributor to this team and their turnaround. And who would have thought that the Marlins, I do the math again, 24 and 35. Oh, no, let me do that again. 24 and 41. They were 17 games under 500. And since then, or 25 and 41, since then they're now 55 and 55. I mean, the Marlins? Who would have thought? Now, I'm not going to take them seriously and have an interesting schedule here upcoming because they play the Astros for 3, and the Astros just got swept by the Red Sox over the weekend. And then they go to Atlanta to play the Braves, who they've played better against them this year, but historically and more so over the last 4 or 5 years, the Braves have just buried the Marlins. So this is a week, and I believe they're playing 5 games in Atlanta where they have a makeup game in the process. So this is it. Let's see now that they've gotten to the point where they're at 500 with this unbelievable run. Do they all of a sudden now run out of gas? Did they put themselves in the playoff mix to where now they're all of a sudden going to fizzle out? And now that they've gotten to this point, it's almost as if, what can they do for an encore? Especially after what transpired over the weekend. So how I'm looking at this team starting tonight is let's see what they do after this Yankee series to where, think about this, they had over 101,000 people at Lone Depot Park, a.k.a. Marlins Park. It was Marlins Park for a million years before it was now Lone Depot Park. Now they're going to go back to what they'll show in the attendance figure as whatever, 10, 11, 12,000, where in essence it's probably anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000. And they won't even come close to selling out the building here over these next 3 days. But the crazy thing is that because of this run, and now that they've gotten to this point, Are they going to continue this? Are they going to continue to win series? I believe they won now 6 straight series. We've talked about their record. Or do they just peter out and fall out of the race at the drop of a hat? This week's going to be telling to see whether or not that's going to be the case. But right now, you can't argue what they've done. Their record has been phenomenal. And I would probably even think if it's not close to the best record since the middle of June, it's probably right there as the top record. So that we'll wait and see what's going to happen with the Marlins as far as them moving forward. And, of course, I'll talk more about them on the podcast today. And then, yes, I'll get into some NFL stuff, the whole Micah Parsons, Jerry Jones, and, I mean, that fiasco, which has become a joke. And you also have the situation with Terry McLaurin in Washington. He's another one that's requested a trade, feeling like he's not being respected as far as getting a new contract. We're a bunch of receivers this offseason, DK Metcalf, among others, that have gotten the bag. So I'll talk about that. The NBA, Luka, as we all know, slim and trim, got his extension, but not the extension that a lot of people thought, as he's going to be in the mix for the next 3 years. But he sets himself up for a ginormous pay after the 27-28 season, which I'll get into. But whether or not this team is a championship-ready team now, considering the moves that they made at DeAndre Ayton's of the world, Marcus Smarts, etc. So I'll touch on that. And then the Knicks making their move. Well, not really a move, but they re-signed Mikal Bridges. So I'll share my thoughts with what the Knicks have done. And then the WNBA is I'm trying to get more into the W. A big injury there for the Minnesota Lynx with Nafisa Collier, and then the Liberty also trying to get some reinforcements as well along the way. Caitlin Clark still hasn't come back, but the Fever won 5 in a row, so they've done well. So you have a few things cooking there with the W. Other than that, not much. NHL, a couple of minor signings, which I won't get into. As now we look forward to an opening week of preseason games in the NFL. I know we had the Hall of Fame game there on Thursday, but big whoop there. I will not touch that game or talk about it. And that's what we got. But what I want to do before I sign off is while I'm here, and I know no one's on board there as far as people in the room, but if you watch the Wednesday live stream, I'm going to host one of the regulars. And I know for those who don't watch, they're going to be like, who's this? What? Whatever. But for my diehards, I should probably rip these up first, right? Yeah, I'm going to put names in a hat. And what I'm going to do is draw one name to be a part of Wednesday's live stream. And of course, if they're not on here, I'll contact them. So that's the first name here. So what I'm going to do is write them down and then fold them up, put them in a hat here. And the first one that gets drawn will be a guest on my live stream come Wednesday. So as I got 5 names, that's 3. Can't forget my guy. Hold on. And then I got one more to go. So yeah, and that's the one thing I want to do is include the people who have been in the room, who have followed. And shout out to Mirjana Popovich and her son Vladislav. I need to get in contact with them. I haven't seen them. I believe Mirjana was feeling ill. I don't know how serious it is, but that's why I need to follow up, which I will do so later on today. All right, so here's what we got. My guy, Biozio, James D. Just so you know, this isn't fixed by any means. My guy, Brent. Nike, of course. And Val B. All right, I'm going to fold these up, put them in the JAYREELZ hat, shake it a couple of times. And like I said, I know they're not on right now, but I'll be sure. And I know I didn't really publish this or promote this today, which is a bad job on my part. And I know I got to start promoting these the right way. But whomever wins, I will reach out to them and say, hey, And you know what? Maybe I'll pull 3 because just in case if the individual is unable to make it, then at least I could use the second one as a backup and maybe even a third for that matter. So I will do that right now. Let's throw the names in the hat. And off we go. All right, here we go. Ready? Just so you see, there's 1. I don't know who the names are. I've already folded up 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyone flying out? I don't think so. So podcast today again, Apple, Spotify, the website, JAYREELZ.com, of course, on YouTube, right here at JAYREELZ. And yeah, definitely subscribe. Please do so, not only on the aforementioned, but more so even YouTube, because obviously you're going to have the video portion of it. Video on Spotify too. I know there's a lot of Spotify subscribers out there or users, whatever, so subscribe there too. And I see I got somebody in the room. I appreciate that. Right now I'm doing a little drawing here of my, I know I should have put the light over here, but again. All right, here we go. I'm going to pick a name or pick a strand of paper. And I'm going to do 3. So the first one that gets pulled, Val B. There you go. You're number 1. Val. If you can't make it for whatever the reason, let's see who number 2 will be. Well, and then of course what I'll do is over the next few weeks, if Val joins me on Wednesday, then the following week. Now, this is only just for this week. So even though if I pull your name second, it doesn't mean you're going to be on next week. For whatever the reason, if Val is unable to make the live stream on Wednesday, obviously you're the next runner-up, and that'd be Nike. So you're number 2. And then number 3, I'll do a top 3. And then, of course, if the first 3 don't make it, then whomever is 4th and 5th, I'm just going to take them. But that's just for this week. Next week, if Val does join me on Wednesday, then what I'll do is I'll take the 4 names, do the same thing next Monday. And James D, you're number 3 on the list. So Bio and Brent, you will, of course, still here, but unless James, Nike, and Val do not participate, you will certainly be next in line. So that's what I got there. Of course, live stream Wednesday, 12 noon here on YouTube. Obviously, I have the link on my channel. Obviously, we'll talk sports. We'll talk whatever it is on your mind. I'll have Val on. He can ask me whatever he wants to ask. And that should be a good time. So Val, Nike, James in that order for this Wednesday, high noon Eastern time. And I'll be sure to reach out to those guys just in case. Now, other news and notes that I got for you. Of course, you know about the podcast. I got some other things cooking with some content here, whether it's a critique video as well as some vlogs, which I'm in the middle of editing. So hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have, if not both, at least one of the 2. I'll keep you guys and gals posted, definitely on the live stream Wednesday, as well as just the channel overall. And yeah, looking forward to recording this podcast. Obviously, it's going to be baseball-centric. And Yankees, Marlins, they're going to headline that. I know the Red Sox sweeping the Astros. That's going to be discussed. A lot that's happened. Mets losing 2 out of 3 over the weekend. Not a good weekend for the Mets. They fall to first place, where the Phillies now have taken a back half-game lead in the division. And what else can I tell you? I think that's it. So another podcast pregame will come to an end momentarily. As always, I appreciate you guys and gals for hopping on board, for participating, subscribing. If you've done so, I sincerely appreciate it. This is the little engine that could. This podcast that has been on going next month will be 7.5 years. And full-time, 1.5 years as of, I checked the date, what's that, the 4th? As of this coming Thursday. So with Thursday's podcast will be 1.5 years that I've been doing this full-time by my lonesome. And I'm trying to blaze a path, carve a trail here in this podcast universe, trying to earn a living, trying to generate income, which is slowly but surely, but hopefully that'll start to pick up with your help by subscribing in the days, weeks, months, and God willing, years to come. So one more time, I appreciate your support and I appreciate you subscribing for those who haven't done so. So if you can hit that subscribe button again, I thank you. And yes, so Wednesday we got that. We got podcast this afternoon, I would say about 12:30 Eastern. Wednesday live stream. Also another podcast pregame on Thursday before the podcast there, Thursday come afternoon. And away we go. And that's the start of the week and start of the month, in essence, for the podcast. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys and gals. Thank you so much for stopping by. And Val, I'll reach out to you as well as Nike and James. And that's all I got. Yeah, JAYREELZ podcast hat. If you want merch, hit me up. I'll be more than happy to send you links or send you info, etc., on how to get a cap, t-shirt, etc. I'll have more merch to come in the hopefully weeks and months to come as we get deeper into the summer and more into the podcast, the live streams, the shorts, the critique videos, the commentary videos, etc., all on this channel for your edification. So with that said, from the South Bronx, South Beach, South Central, South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. Enjoy your Monday. Look forward to the podcast later on, right here on YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple, etc. And until next time, on the flip, baby.